So good evening again, everyone. Good to see so many friendly faces, to see the whole Mahasangha here. And this evening, our Wednesday night Dharma talk, we have the great pleasure, the great honor to be joined by Heather McTeer Toney, who has joined us before, but not for this Dharma talk, not on a Wednesday evening. And for those who don't know of her, she's a politician, lawyer, environmentalist. She famously was the first woman and the first African-American to serve as the mayor of Greensville, Mississippi for 2 terms. And then she was appointed as the regional administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency's Southeast region, which was the 2 terms that under President Barack Obama, and has since become a global figure and has worked and trained leaders internationally in Kenya and France, Portugal, Nigeria, in over 15 countries, and is a kind of prophetic voice, a very clear voice on the giant challenges we're all facing today. And so it's wonderful, Heather, to have you here with us tonight. And I know it's your 9th anniversary of your wedding. And so it's an auspicious day to have you with us. And we can see the roses in the background. And I want to be able to, there we go. I want to be able to spotlight you for everyone. So Heather, good to have you with us, and take it away.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Roshi Joan, for having me tonight. Thank you to each of you for taking the time to be here and to be present in this very important moment. I'm looking forward to the conversation and what we'll share this evening. It was just stated, today is my wedding anniversary, and it is been a definite whirlwind of an adventure with my husband, Dexter Toney. Interestingly enough, we met on the 9th month in September in 2009. And today being our 9th wedding anniversary, I have just been taken up with this number 9 and understanding 9 as both a number of completion, but also of beginnings. And our journey has, if nothing else, been the very definition of that. At the same time, it has made me really connect with some of the things I just honestly don't like. I don't like often how when things come to an end, we don't know what's going to happen. And there's this moment of frustration. While we met in 2009, it was a really very difficult time for me personally. I was actually coming out of a marriage at the time. And so it was really the period of an ending. I was divorced. I was dealing with the trauma of losing a child via miscarriage. I was dealing with pain at that very moment of ending and beginning. And so as we have been, sort of just recounting our journey together and doing that today, but also throughout this week, it's been a moment of thinking through how, as we're talking about the journey of getting to where we are, going through that completion, doing it in a period of our society and environment that is actually dealing with the exact same thing at this very moment in time. This past week, my husband and I were getting ready for Hurricane Ida to come through. We live in Mississippi and are in the path that was originally outlined for Hurricane Ida to sweep through the Southeast. This is not our first storm. So on the week before the storm, I was saying, Dex, time to get the generator out. I'll go to the grocery store. Let's gas up the cars. Let's get ready. Because it looks like this is going to be one heck of a storm. And we know what that means. And so all week long, we prepared, got the kids ready, made sure that the house was in a good situation, covered up everything. And I honestly believe that because we did so much preparation is the only reason we didn't lose power. That does not mean that our friends and neighbors around us, though, were not suffering. And on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating hurricanes that our nation has ever experienced, once again, people along the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi were inundated with water, wind, and storm surge that right now, as you and I are talking on this webinar, are still without power. They are still without water. They are still without ice. They are still without the basic necessities that we are enjoying right at this very moment. As we watched Hurricane Ida trek through the Southeast as a Category 4 storm, we watched it continue to move to the Northeast, where some more of our friends and neighbors were preparing themselves for what could only be described as a level of devastation that we have talked about in terms of climate reality, but really have not experienced until now. We saw and still continue to look at the images of baseball fields completely underwater. The TikTok videos that have been created of houses immediately flooding, the news networks that are showing us what happens when the power of water collides with communities and homes that we typically don't see as being in the path of climate each and every day. And so all of these things have been like rolling around in my brain on my 9th wedding anniversary as we're leading up to today and thinking about the number 9 and completion and how do all of these things come together. And a person continued to stay in my mind, other than my husband. That's actually number 1. But work that we have done with a good friend named Sharon Levine in St. James Parish, Louisiana, just continue to stick out over and over and over again. The reason it stuck out is because in the midst of all of the trauma that people are experiencing right now today, when I talk to Sharon just to call and see how are you doing, how's it going, what's happening in the Louisiana Gulf area where she lives, she immediately said to me, Heather, we can replace a house. I'm blessed because I have life. I'm able to talk. I'm able to communicate about what's happening. She said, but the pollution that is taking place around this area is completely uncalled for and unconscionable. And we have to get the word out. And right at that moment, I realized, we're thinking about recovery the wrong way. What Sharon has experienced throughout her life of living in St. James Parish, a lot of us today think of and know of as being in the center and the fence line of pollution. St. James Parish is a part of what we know and call now Cancer Alley. This is an 85-mile stretch of region along the Mississippi River in the Louisiana area that is full of petrochemical facilities. Every single mile is in some way, somehow connected to a polluting oil and gas or petrochemical facility. Over the years, the constant onset of these facilities in the community have created such a space that people, the region, the land in and of itself is referred to as a sacrifice zone. What is a sacrifice zone? A sacrifice zone is a part of the country that, due to overwhelming environmental hazards and constant injustice and environmental pressures, combined with poverty, the lack of environmental infrastructure, the lack of economic opportunity, the divestment of infrastructure physically, it is now considered a space where both the people and the land are sacrificed for the better good, this is quote unquote better good, of fossil fuels. And so in this sacrifice zone where people, mostly indigenous, Black and brown communities, have lived far before any facilities were located in these spaces, they have been on the front lines of both pollution and climate change for generations. Sharon is a part of that community. Sharon is a leader in that community. And at the ripe young age of 69 years old, she had enough gumption to say to me, Heather, this is not about the recovery. This is about getting and becoming resilient to making sure we don't continue to stay in this place. And that in and of itself helped me to reframe and understand and share and have this conversation with you tonight. And I hope that you're able to pass this along to others all around the world, that when we think about and we talk about recovery, we have to go through recovery in order to get to resilience. The path to climate resiliency is through recovery. That's a hard thing to deal with. Like I was just sharing a minute ago, I don't like the recovery part. It hurts. It's really difficult to deal with the pain of having to overcome an issue, whether it is an illness, whether it is a relationship, whether it is storm damage and rebuilding of your home. The actual process to become more resilient and to get better is through recovery. But what we have failed to realize in our climate work is that environmental justice communities all around this world have been doing this for years. The way that they have had to operate has been through recovery. There has been no other option or privilege to find resiliency in any other way, because the path to becoming resilient, which is tougher, stronger, able to withhold and withstand those things that come against one's person or one's community or one's environment, have been constant and ongoing throughout history. And so for environmental justice communities, marginalized communities, communities of color, it's not new, the idea of getting to resiliency through the recovery. It's a bit of frustration to them at this point. And I say to them to paint a picture of this. Imagine being in a situation where time after time after time, you are injured in the same spot, at the same time, in the same spot. And instead of your doctors and family and caretakers encouraging or talking to you and supporting you in a way that is trying to make sure you're not getting injured in the same spot at the same time, they're telling you that, oh, we've got a new Band-Aid. Oh, just put a patch over that. We're going to get that Band-Aid for you and you're going to be fine. Imagine getting cut on your arm in the same exact position every single month at the exact same time. At some point, you're going to look to the doctor, your caretakers, your friends and family around you and say, instead of giving me a Band-Aid, can you help me move out of this situation where I'm getting injured? Instead of looking and giving me some hydrogen peroxide to heal the wound, can you help me to shift direction or maybe ensure that whatever is harming me is removed? That is the attitude that, quite frankly, we've been taking with respect to environmental justice. While that skin around that scar has toughened up, and yes, our body becomes more and more resilient to the injury, the reality is we really don't want to be injured in the first place. The reality is we really don't want to be in the position where we've got to suffer through that. We don't want to have to recover. We have learned from these lessons that we are resilient and we'd like to move on. And that is what environmental justice communities across this country have to share with us in terms of solutions and what we should be seeking as we are really working as a planet to become more resilient. There are lessons that they have to share with us that we're witnessing right now. Because right now, these communities are experiencing the pain of recovery again. Right now, these communities are working every single angle they can to get the basic needs that we all enjoy. And at the same time, ensure that leaders are paying attention and can make certain that we're preparing to either move, get out of the way, or not be in the same position that we always have been when it comes to climate disasters and injustice. That is the lesson that we learn from recovery. And it makes a lot of sense. As we recover through different aspects of our life, it's painful. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes consideration. If we don't do those things, we end up re-injuring ourselves and having to learn that lesson all over again. We end up wasting money. I am right now recovering from a knee injury. Now, I have done sports all my life. I have been I love triathlons. I used to run all the time. I've done all the marathon fun stuff, but doctors told me a long time ago, you have some knee issues that, guess what? It's just genetic, honey. You're just gonna have to deal with this. Nothing that we could prevent or fix. It's just how your knees are set up. I, in my infinite wisdom, have often decided, you know what, I'm just going to go out and run anyway. It's okay. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. My husband will tell me, Heather, you might not need to do that because remember the knee issue. Have you strengthened your knee? Have you gone to the gym? Have you worked out? Have you made sure that the muscles around your knee are in a position to support the activities that you're trying to do? Because I did not follow those directions, I woke up one morning and literally could not walk, just bouncing around on crutches. Well, part of my recovery process means that I have to actually take the time to do the things that are necessary in order to continue and make my knee more resilient and have access to the activities that I would like to do. I don't do that, I have to go through the process of recovery. If I do that, I still have to go through the process of recovery. But the process of recovery is what makes me more resilient. The same is happening right now in our country and in our nation around climate justice, climate impacts, and environmental justice. We must recognize that in order to fully become resilient as needed for the future, we're going to have to go through the path of recovery, and we're going to have to pay attention to those who unfortunately have not been provided the same opportunities and access and have built a resiliency that's been born of years of systemic racism and isolation that some of us have no idea that those impacts have taken place. Yet, right now, we have to pay attention and listen. Because if we don't, not only will we experience the same things that communities of color have experienced for years, we're doing it to our planet. The International Panel on Climate Change came out with their most recent report on the status of climate and the environment and what things we need to do, what things we can anticipate and expect. And this is a collection of the world's best climate scientists from all over every country. This group has regularly come together to give us an update and an analysis of where we are, how we're doing in terms of protecting our planet, and what the outcomes are if we do or do not follow the recommendations of this particular group. And so in the month of August, they came out with their 6th assessment. And the assessment basically said this: we human beings are the responsible parties for what is taking place on our planet with global warming and the resulting extreme weather impacts that we're experiencing right now. The only group that we can identify as being the responsible party are human beings. Because of our lack of actions to this point, there are some parts of global warming and impacts that we will not be able to change. It's just like when you have water going through a pipe. When you turn the water off, there's still water in the pipe that has to come out of the other end. Well, what the scientists at IPCC have told us is that even if we turn it off right now, there's still some impacts in this pipe that we're going to have to deal with because we didn't turn it off earlier. And as a result, over a third of their assessment talked about risk management and adaptation. Literally meaning that our country, our communities, cities, towns, states, all across the world will have to shift and begin assessing how we will manage and adapt to a new climate reality. So climate change is not coming, it's here. And what we're seeing around us are the real-time impacts of our failure to act several years ago. The panel also said that there's hope. We can turn off that pipe and adapt to what is inside the pipe right now, but that will only come by reducing our human impacts to greenhouse gas emissions, methane, and across the globe, truly understanding that we have to make this significant change for the betterment of all of us. That is the only way we're going to be able to keep global warming to a limit of 2 degrees Celsius. Our initial target was 1.5, and it's highly unlikely that we're going to get there, but we can still maintain getting to a 2 degrees Celsius global warming max if we take these steps right now. So what does that mean? How does that relate to what environmental justice communities have to say in their recovery efforts? It means this: what we are experiencing today, if we do not learn the lessons of recovery that generations of people of color have not only experienced, but have become resilient to, and have shown time and time again that there is a way to survive if we learn how to work together and constantly continue to press attention to these issues. If we're able to learn from them and incorporate these solutions into how we address the climate crisis, we have a shot. We have a shot. And personally, that brings hope to me and my children and my future, not only living in the community in which I live, but celebrating my 19th wedding anniversary and my 29th wedding anniversary, and on and on and on and on. And that's worth it. That is worth going through the recovery. That is worth going through the struggle and the time, and sometimes the pain of recovery, because it means that I am a part of the collective process of being more resilient. And that process means more time with the people and entities that I love, and really true commitment to seeing it exist far beyond my space on this earth, but for the space of those and the environment of the people that I love. That's what it comes down to. That's why Sharon's advocacy and her reaching any way that she can means something different than just participating in hurricane recovery efforts to see FEMA on the ground, bringing water to communities. Her purpose in sharing her Facebook Lives that are showcasing, as she stands in front of her garage, what's happening to the communities and to the people around her, it's deeper than just saying we need the help to put a tarp on the roof. It's showcasing to the world how we will have to respond and react if we don't recognize that this this recovery effort is indicative of what we will all be doing in the near future. Her advocacy around showing how polluting industries under the cover of a storm are continuing to put oil in the water, are continuing to put toxic chemicals over and above what is allowable not only by law, but even through good common sense to be able to breathe. That in and of itself is showing us that we cannot put all of the trust and onus on industries to do the right thing. There has to be accountability. There has to be monitoring, because even if it's not done for the most vulnerable among us and those among us who have been considered the sacrificial lamb and have experienced this, but have taken it upon themselves to continue to show us, then this is not the moment for us to say, oh, they're going to do right, we can just trust them. No. Showing through recovery what's really happening is tantamount to helping us move out of the way of the injury before it happens. And we have to do that right now. We have to not only continue to show and highlight what's happening in St. James Parish and bring attention to Sharon Levine, Rise St. James, stopping the plants from being located and permitted in the Louisiana Cancer Alley area, but also stopping the pollution right now that's continuing to devastate a community. We have to collectively bring attention to what has happened in the Northeast and how we truly need infrastructure, no matter what, to ensure that property, lives, homes, and the future of the people that we know and love, and even those that we do not, are not just tossed to the wind at any given moment with any given storm. We have to do this to ensure that the places that we have known and that we go and that we appreciate and that we love, the opportunities to be a part of the actual nature and environment, the surroundings with which we exist, are still there tomorrow. And it's not because it is our personal favorite or our pet project or the one place that we individually may find. It's because it's a part of our collective recovery. It's a part of us having to go through the process with one another to ensure that our entire community is resilient in the years to come. This is not easy work. It is not work that we can say feels good. It is not work that we can say we have given a donation of $20 and now we can go and do something different. And don't get me wrong, the donations are important and they must come. This is work that pushes us. This is work that stretches us, but it's the work that ensures that there is a tomorrow for us to stretch to. This is the work of completion and beginning at the same time. I'm glad that I don't do this by myself. I cannot imagine being in a space where we thought about climate and environment in a silo, because it takes leaning on each other. It takes those moments of dealing with the pain of a recovery while you are celebrating the anniversary of a new beginning. So that's what I leave with you today. Let's collectively come together, listen deeply, but do the work. And let's continue to celebrate while recognizing that we're recovering, but we're getting to a more resilient planet through our recovery. Thank you, and I'm going to stay around and talk hopefully for a few questions. This is a special moment for us all, but I truly and deeply appreciate you being a part of this work with all of us.
Thank you, Heather. Roche, I wonder if you want to add some words or shall we take questions?
Well, I'd love to ask you a few questions, if that's okay, Heather. I have
Of course.
such a respect for your direct experience in the area of environmental justice. And I'd love you to speak, particularly because we have so many people online who are socially engaged, who are addressing issues related to justice in many different domains. I'd love you to speak about the role of community organizers in preventing more environmental assaults in areas that you aptly named sacrifice zones. So, in areas that are economically deprived and in areas that where individuals, for the most part, don't have they have the will, but access to the power structure in order to demand accountability and also transformation.
That's a really great question, because the role of the community organizers is one that has been, I think, underestimated for years, but it is a rolling current and it is very, very strong. We're truly beginning to see, in some ways, a lot more how the role of community organizers in the space of environmental justice has been with us for some time. So folks like Sharon are not new. This is just exposure to the work that she is doing, which is carrying on from the work that her family has done, her aunt, her grandmother, people who have been a part of the land and witnessing at eye level what has taken place. And so their connectivity to community, as well as to, again, being an eyewitness of what has taken place over time, is a part of giving voice to leaders to make sure that there is accountability. And so, community organizers are truly experts in their field. The same way that we think of someone who has a PhD in physics is an expert when it comes to determining, how fast a rocket could go or to what degree. And you can tell I'm not a physicist. But the same respect that we give to those experts is the same respect that is due to community organizers, because they are truly experts in the history and lived experience of what is taking place in environmental justice communities across this country. And folks like Sharon are connected in a strong network of history, of ancestry, of connection to the land that we're seeing really get the light, because we're in such a climate crisis. We have to look at one another and look really internally at some dark places that we've avoided for some time, because that's how we have to come to climate solutions. So Sharon is doing her work, but she's connected to another amazing activist, Catherine Flowers, who is in Alabama. Catherine Flowers is a MacArthur Fellow, but has been working years to bring light to the travesty of open sewers and sanitations in rural Alabama. This was not a new issue. This has been going on longer than I've been alive, and certainly longer than any of this work has been going in the way that we formally know it. But the attention hasn't been brought to it. That has never and will not stop Catherine from connecting to Sharon and their communities connecting to ensure that not only the needs are met, even at the most local and basic level, but that they're using their power and their influence and their authority to now raise these issues to a higher level of business, of government, and then to keep it there. That's the hard part. Community organizers are experts because not only are they living the experience, they have the wherewithal to keep that tenacity. They have built up years of resilience such that they don't get tired when people don't pay attention to the news story the first time. It just means find another way. So when Sharon doesn't have power, it wasn't, oh, how can we get a news crew down here? It was, get me a generator, because if I can get a generator, then I can show myself and I can find another way. If I can't get on Facebook, let me get on Twitter. Can I do a TikTok? Can I find somebody else's cell phone to send a message to another reporter that can get the word out? That is built from years of figuring it out and finding a way, because you have recovered so many times, you've become resilient to know. And that is the power of community organizers all across this country. And I think there are lessons we learn from that, because we as a environmental community have to learn how to get past no. We can figure out how to use renewable energy. There's no such, we can say, okay, this is a problem, or we can't do it this way, we can't do it that way. No, the lesson that comes from community organizers and from people who've been in this work in marginalized communities is figuring out how do you get past no. Because the no's we've heard so many times, it's just water off a duck's back. Let's keep going. Okay, I know that was a long answer. I'm going to try to do my better.
No, I just think it's great. And, I just think about DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, Keystone. I also think about Flint, Michigan, and, just how this being out in front of us, at a global level has also created a context of not only becoming familiar with the issues, but also dialing down the very issues that have given rise to this marginalization of communities of color. I just thank you, Heather.
It's powerful to me, just the maturity of community organizers. You mentioned the Dakota Pipeline. Immediately, I'm thinking of Tara Huska, who is a powerful, powerful voice in the Indigenous community, and who gets arrested time and time again, who is constantly having her home on the forefront of this very active environmental injustice that's taking place in Indigenous lands that are in the West. Yeah. But the maturity of a Tara, of a Catherine Flowers, of a Sharon Levine, to not scream at the top of their lungs, "I told you so," but instead to say, now that you see, put your hands to the plow and let's go to work. I think, again, is indicative of where we are, where we've got to be. So this power of community organizers is really key and integral to how we're understanding community and climate solutions, how community is really helping us to drive climate solutions that will achieve the reality we need to get to and to meet the IPCC goals.
Thank you so much. I want to open the floor to people in our community to access your experience. So, Kozan?
Of course. So if you're on YouTube and joining us and want to ask any questions in the chat, that is, please do. And from our Zoom gathering with the SEBT community, Donna, I'm going to unmute you to ask a question.
Wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that wonderful reflection. And people of color and Indigenous people are always at the front lines. I'm in Canada and British Columbia. And, with the heat dome, one of our towns just exploded into fire and was burnt within hours because it was 40 degrees, which I think is 112 or something. And I just heard on the news, one of the Indigenous communities really was at the forefront in their village, which was not too far from there, and kept it at bay through actually rigorous training, but also through an understanding of relationship with fire. And one guy was from generations of fire keepers, and they did some prayer and sacrament around it, and they were able to keep their fire at bay. But we in the white community, climate change is an existential crisis, where there was an article in the Scientific America that said people of color, their communities have been involved in existential crisis for decades since colonizers got here. So we see with climate action, there's a doubling of climate litigation. How do we actually change we can go to court, but how do we actually change the paradigm around this? So climate litigation and civil courts have gone up double in 3 years, which is an exciting wave. But it's the same people going to court over and over. And, you talk about these wonderful women as being on the forefront. And I just feel for them to just constantly be doing that. That becomes their lives. It becomes the Indigenous people that I work with, their lives. So how do we change the actual way that we perceive this? And there is a massive movement going on worldwide to actually criminalize these acts of mass damage and destruction to the environment, making personally criminal at the International Criminal Court CEOs, bankers who will bankroll these destructive systems, these destructive industries, insurers. And so this will change that perspective. This will be a deterrent. So there's going to be, I'm just, kind of sharing this. It's called ecocide, these mass damage and destruction of nature. It's a highly diplomatic approach as well as grassroots. And it's going to be at the highest courts in the land, the International Criminal Court. It's going to be on the same statute as genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. This will be the Fifth Amendment. It's years down the line, but it will be a paradigm shift once it's moving in that direction, because corporations will understand that they can no longer have sacrifice zones. There's a whole human rights element to it, as well as a cultural element. If something is culturally significant to people, that will rise it in criminality. So it's a really people around the world can benefit from this, and we're all in this together. So I wanted to share that, and because this is on the forefront of what's happening, because we can't actually let things get to 2 degrees. There will be too many sacrifice zones.
Oh, without a doubt. I thank you so much for sharing that. I think so one of the perspectives that is a part of what you just shared that may go miss a little bit. 2 things real quick. One is don't assume or take the onus off of people who are in this space that it's a lot or it's too much. And I say that in love. We've been doing this for so long. What seems like a struggle to some people is second nature. Because when you have learned behavior, but just in order to exist, when you have learned how to deal with voter suppression, health issues, economic disparity, poverty, climate change, police brutality, all at the same time, you become an expert real fast in multitasking. And so for a lot of the leaders who are in this space, what seems as being so overwhelming to people who have not had that same background experience, for us, this is what we do. And it's like, there was a saying during the civil rights movement. My dad is a retired attorney, and my mom and dad are retired, but they came to Mississippi as part of the voters' rights and civil rights movement. And there was this understanding that everybody has a role to play. Whatever your role is that you're going to play, don't let anybody take you out of that role. There are some people who are going to be on the front lines who are responsible for marching and get arrested. There's some people who are responsible for being at home watching the kids. There's some people who are responsible for ensuring that the food is prepared so that when people get out of jail or they come back home, they've got something to eat. There's some people whose sole responsibility is to go to work and ensure that they're creating and have the funds to get the people out if they need to. There's some people who are solely responsible for typing up the flyers and sharing the messages. But whatever the job is, it's our job, and we take deep pride in doing it, whether it's just me by myself or a collective of people. The other thing that's really interesting about how we're now talking about and really shaping, I think, these global climate solutions is because the beautiful integration of different diverse voices in high places, we're seeing such that the conversation in and of itself has changed. So this is no longer a conversation of solely white men and corporations that we're going after, because now we're seeing more Black, Brown, Indigenous people and women and trans people and folks from all kinds of background who are now in these seats. So whereas, 10 years ago, I was serving in a capacity of a mayor. I was first Black mayor, youngest mayor in Greenville, Mississippi. I would not have thought that 10 years later, I would be working in a majority organization. I work with the Environmental Defense Fund and do community engagement. I don't think 10 years ago, quite frankly, the big green groups would have seen a type of role like this in their future. Yet here we are, right? And now we're seeing across the board more people who are not only at the table, either through invitation or because they have made a space at the table, but we're seeing this become integrated into the solutions. And so that really helps us to shift from the inside and the outside, the work, and get it done. I agree. 2 degrees is not acceptable. It's not. But it's that tenacity that will come from folks who have lived the experience such that I'm not tired. I'm just getting started. So, other people can, hey, strap up, put your seatbelt on, hold on. You might be tired. And I don't mean you, Donna. I'm talking just saying in general, they may be tired, but we were trained for this. This is the moment that our ancestors have prayed for, died for, and ensured that they put everything into us to make sure that the very blood running through our veins was that of resiliency. It's why you can see Tara over and over and over and over again doing what she does. It's muscle memory that has come now through years of this work. So I think this is a beautiful moment to hear about not only the stuff that you're talking about that's going to come in terms of how we're not only criminalizing this, but really seeing this on a global perspective. I think it's going to come faster.
Oh, Donna,
and I'm around for a little while, John. I know there's some other questions, but so Matthew, I'm okay. I've got about
great.
I've got about another 10 to 12 minutes, so I'm good.
Oh, good. So we'll just have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
Elizabeth, if you want to go first with your little one, it looks like you both are back.
Hello. Hi, Heather. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you. I am yes, this is Toki. I'm an American citizen, but I live in Japan, and I've been looking for ways to be politically active from Toki's excited. I've been looking for ways to be politically active from abroad, and you were just speaking to, everybody has their different role in the course of this action. And I'm curious if there's an organization that comes to mind that you can think of that, even though I'm abroad, it's still a great, like I can donate money or I can do something even remotely to help support letting our elected leaders know that I want to divest from carbon and do different things like that.
Mm-hmm. So yes, there are a bunch. Of course, St. James is on my mind, so I'm going to say make sure that you go and look at Rise St. James and find ways to donate to Rise St. James and the work that they're doing. But I always tell people to do this. Start with what's comfortable to you. Start with the places and things that connect to you and that you connect with, because that creates a space where you are vested. So I see your little one there. Immediately, I'm thinking Mom's Clean Air Force. I was a director and advisor to Moms. Moms has been a part of the Environmental Defense Fund, and we've worked together for years. But as a mother, when I came out of the administration, I started working with Moms Clean Air Force because I was so thrilled to see this group of women that was not only working based in the science of climate, but really talking about protecting children's health, no matter where they are, in a way that really resonated with me. I came out of the administration, my son was 6 months old. And so, just knowing and having real experience based in science and being a part of the administration, I knew some stuff that was just terrifying to me as a new mother. And so, working with moms was for me a wonderful way to not only invest my time, but to really help expand the work in a number of different places. So I think that's another great spot. Start with what's close to you and what's closest to your heart. It will stay there forever.
Oh, thank you for the question, Elizabeth. And I'm going to unmute you. Is it Jai Akuen?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline. Okay. Silent Y. Go ahead.
Hi, Heather. Thank you so
Hello.
much for your talk. A few weeks ago, I got an email from my Zetando here in New York City about an event that I signed up for with Echo Dharma activist David Loy. And I thought, oh, I'm really tired. There's a lot going on in my life. This looks really interesting. And I signed up 2 or 3 weeks ago for this. It's happening at the end of the month. Since then, there's been Hurricane Henri. There's been the latest hurricane. I live in New York City. I have friends sending me videos of water pouring into their basements, coming up through their tubs. And I'm hearing more about something that I didn't hear about before, which to me seems like our version of sacrifice zones here in the Northeast, which especially in Connecticut and New Jersey and in New York City, you have a lot of Black, brown, and yellow people living in basement apartments because that's what they can afford.
Mhm.
We don't have enough affordable housing. So therefore, people are converting their basements illegally for other people to rent as apartments. And a lot of the deaths that happened here in the tri-state area were people who were drowning in their apartments. You had whole families, or you had a mother and son who went back for their paperwork and drowned. So I'm seeing a lot of things kind of converge, at least here in the Northeast. Things like, let's talk more about affordable housing, and not just affordable housing in quote unquote sacrifice zones, because people drowned in areas, and I'll take New York City, for instance, people drowned in like Queens and in Park Slope, in the interior of Brooklyn, in the interior of Queens. The area that had the most water and the most deaths was an area of Queens that's not far from LaGuardia Airport. And this is where Black, brown, and yellow people are landing until they can get enough money to be able to afford a quote unquote affordable New York rent. And we all know that that's not really true. We don't need to just build affordable housing, but from hearing you speak, it sounds like we need to build housing that is not only affordable, but is housing that once it's built, if something like this happens again, people aren't starting from scratch. They don't have mold in their houses. They don't lose everything they have, if not their lives. So that's my first thing, if you could address. And my second thing, I and many other folks, after spending days hearing on the radio about the kind of devastation that happened in the Northeast here, we're really concerned in New York City because we have someone possibly coming into the mayor's office. And let's face it, New York City is a Democratic city, so it's going to be Adams who will come in. But he has absolutely no climate plan. None. I did not vote for him. I voted for the person who had a climate plan. But he has no climate plan. And this is of great concern to a lot of folks. I know people who now don't want to take the subway if they know it's going to rain heavily. I'm sure you've seen the videos of our subways lately. And doesn't Joe Biden need to create some kind of cabinet level department besides the one that he's already created in terms of climate, a resiliency department, a secretary of resiliency, instead of just relying on, oh, we'll jerry rig this thing or we'll prop this other thing up? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have raised some very key points that are just so important for all of us to realize. And hopefully I can add a little bit that this is going to give you some more work to do. I hate to tell you, but it's going to give some more work. Okay, so bear with me here. What has happened in New York, seeing, and it's such an important issue, the number of Black and brown people that live in basement apartments, understanding the dynamics of housing in an urban area is something that has been known for a long time, and is something that has been known by people who live there, but also the officials who permit this, right? So this has been knowledge that we have been aware of, layered with discrimination and housing practices in a state and nation, that now consequences are being paid. The light is coming up, and the consequences of these restrictions and this failure to action is coming to light. At the very same time, Southern and Northern friends and neighbors are connecting to say, we got you, we've been through this, we know how it goes. Look at what we have been through, what has happened here, and how years of systemic racism and policy have put us into a particular place. Do not repeat our mistakes. So that's the connection here between, you know, we can go back to Great Migration, Black folks leaving the South, going to Chicago, Detroit, going to New York, New Jersey, right? Here we are at this space where we're all reconnecting to our aunts, uncles, grandmothers that have lived this experience, and our cousins that are still in these spaces to say, let's connect, because we do not want you to go through what we have been through. That's number one. The second piece of this is how, because there is such a climate crisis, folks are not waiting for government, quite frankly. Just today, there was an announcement from one of the big funds, Bezos Earth Fund, that there is millions of dollars that have been given to environmental justice communities, and another $130 million that is designated to go to EJ specific work before the end of 2021. One of the groups that got funding is We Act for Justice, which is located in New York. Peggy Shepard, who has been the director of We Act for Justice, has been doing this work and has been talking about this for years. She has been saying exactly what you have been saying, but within the past 5 years, because of the climate crisis, because we have to pay such attention now to different solutions, she's sitting in those roles and alongside those board members, the CEOs, to say it at the table. Going back to even what Donna was saying before about, you know, making these changes at a very high level. Peggy Shepard, New York right now, is in those spaces, and now we're seeing funding come because philanthropy recognizes that in order to save themselves, they have to put money into environmental justice. So it is no longer on the onus, and I think it's part of all of our responsibility to say we're not putting this and leaving this to government leaders, because we can look at what has happened in the past when we left it to government leaders. And until we have more of the people who are thinking in this way, and it's coming, it is happening, but we don't have time to leave it all there. So that's why I said this is going to be some more work for you, because my charge to you now, go find Peggy. Peggy, they just got $6 million to do some more work. Go find her, take the group that you have signed up with, identify with that environmental justice group that's right there in New York that is dealing with housing, pollution. They're dealing with the stuff that you're talking about, and help raise and elevate their voice. That now is part of your journey and your work. Like I said, this is not easy for all of us to do, but it takes all of us doing it together. I didn't mean to give you some more work to do.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Oh, you have one more thing. Are you able to unmute? There you go.
Yes. What about Department of Resiliency, federal? I mean, it just seemed like if he's going to do all this work, and he and Bernie are making climate change a big part of their $3 trillion hoo-ha, whatever that
Mhm.
is, why not put more behind it?
Well, let me just put it this way. We don't necessarily need another title and another salary to do the work that we can already put in other places. You have right now an all of government approach that's been assigned by the Biden administration. We have an international office of domestic climate policy that's led by John Kerry and a domestic
Right.
that's led by Gina McCarthy. They now have their teams and they have put more power into places like CEQ, which is the Center for Environmental Quality, works directly alongside the White House. Up until the Biden administration, it had not gotten more than $2 to $3 million a year in funding. Now they're talking about $100 million in funding so that they can do some of this work. We have the Biden Justice 40 initiative, which is specifically allocating 40% of any and all federal funding to environmental justice projects and to the benefit of environmental justice communities. And so that is a directive to federal agencies that you've got to put money. They've got to put this money and resources into the communities. I can't say that I agree that we just need a whole nother individual and a salary and all that comes along with that to take out of that money, that we have avenues to spend it now. It's more important for us to implement it, get the funding to the people who can use it through the channels that we have in a manner that is efficient and takes advantage of us having access to all of these modes of government before it changes, because politics is cyclical. We're on a side now where we have access to the three houses of government, but that won't always be the case. And so I would prefer personally, first, because I've been a part of the administration and I know how the bureaucracy can be slow, but also just because it just makes common sense and you don't waste money, use the avenues that we have. I don't need another person to tell me how to do it when there are people on the ground who have been doing it. We just need to get them the resources.
Thank you, Heather. I know it's a big day for you, and you've been with us past our time together. I wonder, Roshi, do you have any closing words, or Heather, do you have any closing words before we end together?
Yeah, I'd like Heather to share her closing words. And I actually did prepare some content for tonight, but Heather carried it. And I'll be sharing that as a document. You can read it all shortly. So not to worry, but Heather, I don't know if everybody knows, Heather and I met in Washington, D.C., thanks to Jane Fonda on Fire Drill Friday. Thanks to actually Kozan's mother, who said, you should come. And I'm an old friend of Jane's. And I just felt immediately that Heather's work, her voice and her view is so clear and so prophetic. And also, so often we just get stuck in the first noble truth of suffering. And we never get out of there. And you know, you get to 3 and 4. That is freedom from suffering and the path out in a way that I've heard few people speak to. So thank you, my dear friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roshi. And let's tell them the whole story. I walked up, I had no idea who Roshi John was. She was sitting on the couch in the back room, and I just went and plopped down next to her and said, I think I'm supposed to sit next like, I think I'm supposed to know you and sit next to you. I'm just going to sit here. And she's like, you said, yep, you are. And I am so grateful that just our energies and everything have connected. So thank you so much. I appreciate each of you. And do me the gracious favor of spreading this far and wide. Do not just let it sit here tonight. Spread this message of the work and let us share it all and do this together. That is my ask of each of you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Heather. We intend to do it together. And thank you for being in this group with us tonight and for all the work you're doing in the world. And everyone from our Zoom community and on YouTube will close this evening, and we'll see you next week. Be well.